Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. And on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in the workplace and beyond and look for solutions as well. I'd like to introduce my guest to you today, Colby Bauer. Got it right.
Okay. Got it right. Nailed
it. Colby is the co-founder of Thread alongside with his wife, Mackenzie. Or Everyday Carry brand offering expressive wallets, bags, and other accessories. My wife has several of those things.
Thank you.
Colby and Mackenzie started the company together soon after getting married while living in Hawaii in 2015. Thread has grown rapidly over the past 9 years, now employing over 100 employees. In 2019, Thread was ranked number 104 of the fastest growing companies in the U.S. by Inc. 5000, and then again in 2020 ranked number 442. More than the products Thread sells, the company's mission is to inspire and empower people to keep pushing and progressing no matter what life throws at them, or in other words, to carry on, which is the company's slogan. In 2022, Colby founded the nonprofit Carry On to help teach kids resilience skills and promote mental health through action, sports, and outdoor recreation. Colby loves to skateboard, surf, snowboard, travel, eat good food, and adventure with his wife and his 3 little girls, Ray, Scotty, and Sunny. He's passionate about serving others, building businesses, and making a difference in his community. Colby, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks
Thank you
for the
so
intro.
much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Carry on. I love that.
Yeah.
My favorite tagline is from Meet the Robinsons, the old Disney movie, just keep moving forward. Same thing, right? Just keep going, right? No matter what happens, just keep going.
It's funny. We were, before we actually started recording, talking about origins of phrases.
Yes.
The keep calm and carry on.
Oh,
was
yeah.
like the, I don't know, you probably know this, but yeah, it was during the war where was it Revolutionary War? Maybe?
Really? Wow.
But it was Europe or Great Britain's slogan was just
okay.
keep calm and carry on. So I love the narrative of carry on. You hear it a lot now. As I am more aware of what carry on means,
Yeah.
you hear it in a lot of songs, in movies, in just quotes in general. But it means a lot to me now. I have it tattooed on my wrist.
Oh, nice. I love that. So tell me about just kind of the interest in mental health in general. Obviously, you start this nonprofit. Not everyone does that, trying to run a successful business. So why the passion about it?
That's such a good question. I'll tell you in as short as possible, but basically take it back to like my own childhood and then even my parents' childhood. You can see this through line of mental health issues that have resulted in a lot of addiction. And so my mom, and she has given me approval to talk openly about her, and she wants her story to get pushed out there. But she has suffered through alcoholism through most of my life and opioid addiction. And if you look back at just my mom, just for a second, I mean, my dad and my sisters too, but just my mom, as a child, her dad left her family. So she was raised by pretty much a single parent, moved from Washington State to Utah, new to this community, trying to just figure out life. And fast forward into their childhood, my uncle, so her brother, had died by suicide. And he dealt with depression. He dealt with severe OCD and just there wasn't much education around in that time.
100%.
Awareness, education. So I don't think they had the vernacular to even like talk openly about it.
Yeah.
And even if they did have the vernacular, there's the stigma too, that there's that barrier. So with all that to say, these roots of mental health issues and addiction, they start at a very young age while we're developing. And so as I kind of started to examine my own mental health, this all kind of came to, I would say like a close or to rock bottom, so to speak, in 2020. As the world was hurting, my family in particular was really hurting. And I know everybody went through their own fair share of stuff. I watched my mom go homeless during this period, and my anxiety, I had a newborn, and then we were trying to keep Thread alive, the company. My anxiety, which it kind of reared its head in a different way. I'd been able to manage it for most of my life, but it just got unmanageable to the point of like panic attacks on a regular basis, where I was like, dealing with this. I hold all my stress in my stomach, so it was like, just like this almost like a sword in my stomach all day, and like paralyzed at the end of the day. And so all that to say, I started to learn more about mental health and what it meant for me and my family. Started seeing, a therapist, got on some clinical attention, got on some medicine, and started just learning about how, ways I can cope. And it all just kind of started to bloom from there. As you soften the soil through trial and trauma, then you're able to bloom. And that's what happened. So if you look at 2020 from there, that's where the idea was rooted. I had this epiphany that, okay, I want to play the role of prevention, and I want to do that at a very early age for kids. While they're developing, while they're learning, that they're given mental skills and resilience skills, and they understand some of this vocabulary to be able to express themselves to their parents or otherwise, and we can confront it, and they're ready. So the whole premise is that they're given all these tools so that when life comes at them, which it's inevitable,
It will.
it will,
Absolutely.
that they know how to carry on. So carry on what we do, and what I'm passionate about is action sports, outdoor recreation. So growing up, I also played like soccer in college, and I played team sports, but independent sports are beautiful because they're independent. There's no refs, there's no like rules really, and so you have to rely on this community that becomes your team. They become your coach at times, they become your cheerleaders at times, and so you kind of rally together. There's also like a low barrier of entry. If you think about skateboarding, like you just buy a skateboard and you could get one at Walmart for like $20
Exactly.
and a slab of cement.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, then you're off and ready. And I love the low barrier of entry.
Yeah.
But then also the ingredients of action sports by nature are some fear driven. There's risk involved.
Yeah.
There's a lot of falling. And so you have to be able to tap into a mental aspect, not just the physical, but okay, if I'm going to drop into this half pipe, I have to overcome my fears.
Yeah.
I have to go from what we call our red mindset, the I can't do mindset, on transition to a green mindset. And how do I do that? And when I fall, because I will fall, how do I pick myself back up? How do I lean onto my community? All these different aspects of what I would call resilience. And you change that out for mental health. We wanted to teach at a very young age. So all that came to, and this, I told you I'd answer it very in a nutshell what I didn't. But all that, 60 years in the making, call it, from my mom's childhood all the way through my childhood and raising, to finally landing on, okay, how do I utilize sport and outdoor recreation to teach these skills to kids? So we have ages 4. We call them our skater tots. I mean, 4-year-olds are coming in and they're learning about mindsets, and they're learning about breath work, and you're like, we never, as kids, like there's never had that.
No.
So yeah, anyway, you get where the passion lies, and this is my lifelong pursuit. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
I love that. There was a book that it's a few years old. It's called The Anxious Generation.
I've heard about it. I haven't read it.
It's great. It's really, really good. But and the author, he's a social psychologist, and one of the things he talks about is that he calls it the Great Rewiring, and it happened started in about 2012, which coincided with the advent of the iPhone, which was 2010. But then when apps became popular and you started to get things like Instagram and Facebook, and that was around 2013 or so, and just this, it's just been a change in the way people interact with one another. I think there's great things about it, but I also think that there's some not so great things about it. But one of the things he talks about is that parents now, they don't want to let their children fail. They don't want to let them children have these negative experiences coming from very great places, because maybe they had bad childhoods. They don't want their kids to have bad childhoods. But because of that, if they don't let them fail, then they almost get, desensitized to, we need to get sensitized to failure. We need to learn what failure's like. And I love that idea of skating to do that, because it's such a practical application of that. Because try to teach that to a 5-year-old, just this idea of what it means to fail, that's going to be hard for her to grasp. But if you teach her the fear of dropping into a half pipe and skinning her knees and stuff like that, she'll totally get that. She'll understand exactly what that means. Yeah. And then you just have to help her understand what that means in emotional and other things in life. Yeah. But she has a very practical understanding of it. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I love it, man. Yeah, I think you're spot on. We embrace the stress. There's a healthy level of stress that a kid needs to feel to get wired and get comfortable with these things. What's beautiful, and to your point, you go through, you have a kid that, you put them on top of a half pipe and they're ready to drop in, or they're not, and they're scared. Okay, we'll take it step by step. But then in our program, our curriculum is we have a play period, a stretch period where you're stretching yourself to accomplish a goal, and then a rest period. And these are kind of periods in life or phases that you can take in any, whether it be work or otherwise. But when we rest, this is when we actually have a discussion. We have an actual like 15-minute break, 10 to 15-minute break, and we have a collective discussion about mindsets. And we have a presentation, and it's open discussion. And it's like now they get to hear from their peers, and now they get to learn about how protocols to tap into. So now, like my girls have gone through the course a few times, and when Scotty, who's 5, she's scared still to go to school. She gets anxious and she gets overwhelmed. We can say, hey, take a safety breath,
right?
Or give yourself positive affirmation, or take the hero stance. Like all these little protocols that a 5-year-old can understand,
right?
And it helps her, and outside of school. But what's beautiful, again, to the point where skateboarding comes in, it's like you learn that, you have this open discussion, this open lesson, then immediately go straight into getting on top of that ramp again, and you get to put it to practice. And that's when it really wires. It's like, okay, I heard Coach Cole talking about this in front of a screen, and maybe that resonated, maybe it didn't. The moment you get up on top of the half pipe and you have to actually tap into those skills, that's when it actually sinks in, So you're right. Skateboarding has it's beautiful, and not just skateboarding. We eventually want to expand it into, rock climbing, mountain biking, snowboarding, surfing, stuff like that too.
Tons of things. Right. Yeah. Okay. I'm super interested. So because what you're describing clinically is excellent. I mean, no, seriously, it's what the process that you're taking. It's well designed clinically. Did you just like come up with this on your own? Did you have a consultant or what?
If Cole Parkinson, our executive director, he has a master in sports psychology. If he was here, he could articulate way better than I am. So I've kind of just like hijacked some of what he says. But Cole and Davey, so Davey's our program director, Cole's our executive director. They put their brains together. Cole has a master's in sports psychology and a background in just mental health and all that, especially like youth. And then Davey, he was a math teacher in high school, so he understands curriculum, he understands youth, but he also coached skateboarding for 15 years. So they put their minds together, and how do I take the science and then now this like art, we'll call it art or sport, and how do we apply the science to the sport? And they put their brains together, obviously with the help of countless books and articles and data. It's all science backed. To your point, it's all
right. Well, that's what it sounded like. That right?
Backed. We didn't do all that research, but we leveraged all that to build this curriculum, which we call the Carry On curriculum. It's an 8-week program that step by step, every week we're learning about a new skill, and it compounds. So once you're done with 8 weeks, you can recycle and do another 8 weeks, and it builds on each other, and it's always dynamic. So it's not like they're going to be hearing the same presentation over and over and over. It's more open discussion too, so it can be different every time.
Especially the was it the rest time? What was the
rest?
The rest time, right? Because that's going to be different every time.
Yeah,
because it's going to be a different group of people, different discussion, different events that happen before that are going to inspire different topics. I mean, you're
learning new tricks.
Yeah, exactly.
There's different fears tapped into new tricks, whatever else. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that, because then it is kind of infinitely repeatable.
Yeah.
When it comes to that. So how does one enter into this? I mean, is it?
So it is a paid program. However, if you can't afford it, it's we sponsor you. So you'd apply, and then we have donors that have given that money for sponsored people. But yeah, our only location currently is in Provo, Utah. We're opening up a second location this year in South Jordan. So still looking to expand. Right now, again, we're only 2 years and 3 years into this of just currently validating and optimizing everything so that we can scale. So eventually we'll hopefully have locations across the state and further, but right now it's just Provo. So look us up, carryon.org, and then you can sign up. Yeah.
When we moved here to Provo a couple of years ago, we bought our house sight unseen. There's a whole long story we won't go into, but the guy that lives right across from us has like a skate park. in his backyard. He has all these massive ramps.
Where do you live?
I live in Southwest Provo. You might know where this place is.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But
I mean,
anyway,
when you build a skate ramp, somehow skaters just kind of find
yeah,
it.
exactly. So he's got a couple half pipes there, and then he
Nice.
builds these big ramps that he can pack into the back of a trailer.
I know exactly who it is. It's why am I spacing on his name? Do you remember? his
I
name?
can't. My wife would know. I
Why
can't
am
remember his
spacing?
name.
Yeah.
Anyway,
He builds
Um,
stuff for like X Games and
yeah,
big-
totally, yeah. And so
Nitro Circus.
so we get a front.
John is his name.
Oh yeah, John.
John.
Yeah. So we get to see when these guys come to jump off these things, and there's a guy that comes in a wheelchair. He's a paraplegic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wheels.
Wheels. Yep.
Yeah, wheels. Yeah.
Yep.
We see him all the time going off these ramps.
He's incredible.
And he is incredible. And John has built like this. It's like this kayak that has like wheels on the bottom, and they'll ride that thing off it, and
Crazy.
it's just this fearless thing. But I love it because it's the way that we manage anxiety, the way we manage fear is to do the thing that scares us.
Totally.
That is the only
Well,
way
I
to
mean, you
manage
mentioned
it.
it's like it's fearless, but it's not. It's like
Good
because
point, yes.
I watched Wheels get pushed in by Bob Burnquist into a mega ramp, which is like a huge ramp. It's a huge gap, right? And you can see the fear in Wheels' eyes,
Mm.
and he's trying to overcome it, and then he just goes for it. And so it's not. He has to learn to overcome fear
Yeah.
mentally first. And then he goes off the first time and he chips his tooth. He lands on his face,
Sure.
chips his teeth. And then, okay, how does Wheels go over this massive thing and then get back up
Right.
and
right.
go and do it again? And he lands it the second time. And it's like, that's a practice that wasn't just like he was born with,
No.
and I'm sure there's some athletes that have more tolerance to fear, but he had to adapt. He had
Yes.
to evolve. He had to grow and learn that skill. And that's like, we look at these action sport athletes, especially the elite athletes, and we watch them in the Olympics, we watch
Mhm.
them in X Games, and we go, oh my gosh, these guys are fearless. It's like not even true.
Yeah.
These
yeah.
guys are they're managing their fear. They're overcoming their fear. But trust me, when they fall and hurt themselves, and from a kid, they're learning to overcome that.
Yeah.
And it's a skill. It's hard. It's hard to learn, but to your point, you have to embrace failure,
Yes.
embrace stress. And if we don't do that, because my whole mission is we got to build a resilient youth. If we don't embrace fear and failure and stress, our rising generation, like blatantly put, is going to be weak.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to be resilient.
Absolutely.
And we're going to fail, and it's going to hurt more than it should have been.
Yeah.
So we need to learn these skills early. And so that's my whole goal in life, is just to help the rising generation learn these things.
My years ago, our son was asked to give a talk at our church. He was like 12 years old, and he was scared to death, and he didn't want to do it. And so my wife Kristen, she the day before, he's basically having a panic attack, and as he's thinking about it, and she said to him, she said, "McKay, I don't care if all you do is get up there and say your name and sit back down.
Yeah.
But you have to get up there and do it, because if you don't, it's going to be 10 times harder the next time someone asks you to do this." And it's just, I'll stand up there with you. I'll hold your hand, whatever you want me to do. He got up, he gave a great talk, sat down. Now he's studying to be a psychologist. I mean, he's an excellent
really?
public speaker. Yeah. I mean,
That's
he's just,
incredible. Yeah.
he's 28 years old now. This is a long time ago, but just that whole point of doing those things that are difficult. And I love that you mentioned that it's not fearless, because you're absolutely right. And that's the perfect way to describe it. Because if we say, oh, well, these people are just fearless, then that makes us feel like, oh, well, this is just easy for them.
They're
It's
not
easy
relatable.
for them.
Yeah,
no,
it's not.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, you think about it like Simone Biles,
yeah,
right? Well, I mean, like you see her, she is doing things that most humans will
Right.
never do. And we look and we think, oh, these guys are invincible.
Right.
And she wins gold. And then the next Olympics rolls around and she opts to stay out of it because of whether, anxiety,
Right. Mental
fear,
health
whatever it
struggles,
is,
yeah,
mental health
yeah.
stuff. And you go, whoa, like now it became real for us.
Yeah.
Like someone like Simone Biles actually does feel these things. Like she can perform. Yes, she's incredible, but that does not take her away from
Right.
being a human. But we tend to, when we watch it, especially when we watch on TV or on social media, we go, oh, this person's invincible. This person's
Right.
fearless. This person was born with this. And it's like, no, they worked their butt off
Yeah.
and continue to work their butt off to get there. And I think that's important to know, because they become relatable, and you go, oh, like if I want to become elite in whatever I do, I have to tap into the same skills. So I think it's
Yeah.
important to realize, like, the people we look up to most, especially on TV again, like whether that be, I was just watching the Grammys last night. It's like, um, you see this woman performed and she was incredible, and then she also she won an award and she got up and you could tell her voice was quivering and she was like crying and she didn't know how to like cope, like, but it's like she can knock it out of the park, but then you realize, oh, she's now human, and she's like standing in front of this mic trying to like capture her words, and she's like, no, she's just human, and so you can do that. You can knock it out of the park. You can be the elite athlete, but these people have worked hard to get there,
And that would apply to everything. I mean, right.
Any discipline. Yeah.
You and Mackenzie, who, get this idea in 2015 to start a brand, the thread stuff.
Yeah.
And it's very successful, and and a lot of people have it. And people will be like, oh, well, that, he's probably just a born entrepreneur and they just got lucky or whatever. But it's not like that. Everyone's working hard. Yeah. Every single person out there, you hear Warren Buffett tell stories, or Bill Gates, or Steve Jobs, or people like that we look up to, and we think they're just these amazing captains of industry. And at the same time, when you really start to dig into their lives, you're like, man, these people, they struggled. It was difficult. It was hard.
Yeah. I mean, you told me just the origin of how you got to this podcast, where, you unfortunately had come across somebody who in the business sense got so overwhelmed and their mental health was so low that they died by suicide.
Yeah.
And that is, it should be very, very eye-opening to anybody in business. And I assume most people listening to this podcast are in business, and that's not uncommon, for people at the helm, at the highest level of leadership. It can be very, very lonely, but also employees that you would never guess, you would never ever guess that they were dealing with some sort of like depression or ADHD or name it. There's a long list of things that they could be dealing with that you would never know. But to be aware, and to be educated and know, we were talking like, how do you react? What are the questions that you have to ask?
Right.
What are the protocols? What are just in general, like symptoms that you should be aware of, and those types of things as an employer or as a coworker, because this is not just, we should not be alone in this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people think we should, and they feel embarrassed by their mental health issues or whatever they're dealing with, that they are not willing to open up. And I keep saying this, and I stand by it. If the stigma is a brick wall, and we got to knock down the brick wall, the hammer is vulnerability.
Yeah.
We have to knock down the stigma with being vulnerable, and that might start with the employer. That might start with the people that you think that they think you're invincible, and I was raised by a dad who I think was scared to do that, because he had to be the rock for our family.
Yeah.
And so by any form of vulnerability and saying that I'm weak in these areas, then we either didn't feel comfortable, secure, or there was justification for our actions or whatever else, right? Whatever his reasonings were. But as a parent, he felt this obligation to be perfect. It's like, no, you don't have to be. Nobody
and
is
you
like,
can't anyway.
You couldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
And you hiding and not being vulnerable actually kind of makes it worse. It backfires eventually. And so I guess all that to say, like, as employers or as coworkers, it's sensitive area, because you might not, it's work, it's a workplace, so you got to understand some of the lines there. But we're not alone. We shouldn't be alone. We should be looking out for each other and asking these questions. Like, I see billboards. Sorry, I'm rambling here, but like I see billboards like the best way to prevent I think it's like the best way to prevent suicide is, how are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just asking, just talking about it. I really think that business owners, CEOs and other people, they can set the tone for this, because if coworker to coworker is great, and if a coworker is vulnerable to another coworker, I think that's awesome. But I don't think that's going to have the same impact as if from the top down, if the message is, it's okay, we're all struggling, I'm struggling with things as well. And you don't have to completely air your dirty laundry. It's not like that. Like you said, there's lines and protocols that will happen, but just to express that vulnerability at almost at a systemic level, I think then that gives people permission to say, okay, it's okay for me to have a bad day. Yeah. It's okay for me to not feel like I want to come into work today, and to mention that to someone, to say, you know what? I'm just feeling off today, Okay, well, let's talk about that, and maybe that's all they need is just to vent for 5 minutes and talk about that. Maybe it's symptomatic of a much deeper concern, in which case it's like, oh, well, let's see if we can get you connected with so-and-so and get you some more, the more help you need. But that's not going to happen, like you said, even in your family with your dad. And I'm sure with the best of intentions, trying to thinking the best way I can run this family is to look perfect.
Yeah, right.
He was mistaken, but anyway, people in those positions of leadership, if they'll just take the time to say, you know what, it's okay to feel this way, that's going to go so far.
I agree 1000%. Especially like, as I finally pulled the trigger and maybe that's a bad term, but like, saw a therapist.
Yeah.
I actually got the clinical attention to talk openly about my traumas and just my thought errors, trying to figure out my own brain, because we're all, figuring stuff out. And as I did, I learned more about myself. And as I was able to put words to my thoughts and words to my thought patterns and all that, it's like, okay, now I'm actually way more aware that like where I'm weak. And so it's like maybe the first step in vulnerability is kind of figure that out first, like figure out your own brain, like,
exactly.
and I'm still, obviously trying to figure it out. But like, I think that's probably the first step, is realizing and accepting where you are weak. And then to your point, not being afraid to actually say it, and share that, especially, with your peers and your coworkers and things, because then that opens the door and I don't need to be perfect. Like, he's not perfect. It's just like it helps the dialogue just open the doors. And that is so crucial, because we were talking right before this too. It's, if you're just in it for your self-interest, getting more out of your employees by just their health,
right,
then you're winning.
You're already ahead of where you were yesterday.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's actually like, it's selfish, but if you're just selfish, you should still be focusing
on your employees' mental health.
Yeah.
And if you're altruistic, you should be focusing on it just because you're a good person.
Yeah.
You want them to be happy as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and teaching a 4-year-old to learn resilience on a skateboard. I mean, the more you can do that, you're going to create, you're going to put people like me out of business in 20 years.
I hope.
Seriously, I hope so too. Just because those things, like you said, learning that at an early age is so critical, especially pre-adolescence.
Yeah. And pre-phone, like you were talking about.
Oh, exactly. Because adolescence is just
adolescence in general, but
it's just such a mess. And everyone's going to struggle. But if they go into it with good tools already, like your 5-year-old, in school, I mean, she'll do well in school because she's learning these things that she can do that hero stance, and she can take that breath and stuff. I think that's awesome. It's amazing.
Yeah, thanks. Well, yeah, I'm obviously very, very passionate. I've, dedicated. I'm still young, which is great, because I've landed on this. It obviously didn't come without a lot of pain,
Sure.
Prior, but now having landed on this goal, this life vision for what I want to accomplish, it's really, there's so much work to be done, and I'm excited. I'm like fueled by it. And so one thing maybe you don't know is you have Carry On as the boots on the ground. The other arm of it is the Carry On Studios, which is a for-profit entity, but it's aligned with the same mission, which is to build a resilient youth. We do that through entertainment, storytelling, showing up where kids would consume content, whether that be YouTube, video games, books, magazines, podcasts, wherever, and showing up in a very, very impactful, healthy, positive way to reinforce this curriculum, to reinforce these protocols, and show up in all these facets for mass awareness. Because I think it does start with, you got to even be aware of that it's an issue, or aware of how to overcome it, and to be educated. And that's hard to do, like at a global level or a mass level. But I think through storytelling and through these other forms of media and entertainment, I think we can impact a lot of kids and parents along the way.
Absolutely. Colby, thank you so much for talking with me today.
This
has been very enjoyable for me. I love your passion and the ideas you have. They're awesome. I mean, you're onto some really, really good things. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Remember that change starts with you, and together we increase our mental health momentum.